So hey guys, this is the second video that we are going to start adding some materials and looking at how they respond to the light sources. So where we left off is, let's go back to our viewport and let's go to the bookmark and open the render. This is where we left off. No, both of these objects, the floor, the backdrop, and the torus knot, they actually have the Lambert 1 material. So they have the same material. Lambert material as we said in the first week is a material that is flat, doesn't have any reflections or specularity or refractions. So it's a flat shader. What we need to review is kind of mostly the properties of this material. I'm going to change. I'm not going to use this material right now. This is the Lambert 1 and this is the material. This is another Lambert that came with the object. Go ahead and add another Lambert to this one. You can go and right click when you have the object selected and go down and assign and assign a new material. We get this window here, which is a material editor, or else a hypershade as it's called in Maya, and it's kind of a shortcut to the hypershade. Let's hit a Lambert, and as you can see, the Lambert, it's called Lambert 2. We can say torus, and so we know what material we're gonna be making. We can select it later, and it's good to have naming conventions for your materials. So this is the type. You can always change the type of the material over here, and we have a color, transparency, all these settings we're going to be talking about. Bump mapping, we're not going to see that today. We're going to look at this when we actually review how to enter, how to add like textures on your objects. So let's start with the color, and if you click on the color here, you can see the color wheel, RGB color wheel, and then we are going to add, I can add another color here. Let's add a green. Let's add a light green color and render that. Light green, and as you can see, there's a lot of a contrast here, and we would like to sort of have the effect of indirect lighting. We could achieve that with adding more intensity to this light. 12. And notice, yes, but no. Yes, we are getting on the highlights here on the shader, but really we're not really getting softening any of this. These are like pitch black areas on the shadow. How can we do that? Let's go back to this light and decrease it. Let's go back to 9 or 8. Let's keep it to 8. And go back to our material, which is called torus. Let me name it torus material. So we know that it's like it belongs to this shape, and it's also the material of this shape. We want to go, and I'm going to leave the transparency out for a second. I'm going to explain it in a little bit, but we want to go to setup to add some ambient color. This adds sort of an indirect lighting effect. So it's sort of like lights up the areas that have very high contrast. So in a way, you want to smooth out those areas which we are facing here on this object. These areas are really sharp and black, and so there's a lot of contrast here, and there's no kind of softness to the shadow. So what we could do is add some ambient color. So if we increase the ambient from black, it goes all the way to white. Look what happens up here. It's actually adding softness, or like brightness and softness to the color. So if I increase it and go back to my rendering, hold this render and make a new one, notice that now our object is lit from the two light sources, but then it has this effect that it's being that light is being bouncing around, so we get this kind of nice and soft shadow. We could soften the shadow also of the light because now it's really sharp, and we're going to see how we can do that later on with area lights. But for this light, we could go and instead of having a completely black shadow, we can just make it a little gray. So if I select an area and render, you can see it's like a little bit softer. So the ambient color, if I go back to my ambient color and take it all the way up, I will get an extreme effect here. So it's almost, we're kind of losing control right now. If we turn this down and if we use transparency, see that objects can become transparent. So we have transparency. We can add ambience to that, so we can see how that looks. So that way we have like a transparent object with some ambient color. I can have my transparency all the way to white, and that will make the object completely disappear. Now notice if I go to my transparency and change the color, this is white, so it makes the object completely transparent. If I go ahead and select the color and select, let's say, pink color here, and that's my transparency, notice what happens. We have a color and we have transparency, so those two are mixing together. I need my color to go back to black, so I'm taking away the color, and let's see what happens if we have only a tinted. It's almost like making tinted glass, and we'll see with reflective materials how this is going to work out. I can add some ambient. If you add ambient with a tinted transparent object, nothing really happens because the ambient is affecting the color. Color is 0, so ambient is not really working on right now. What about the incandescence, which we're going to talk in a second? The incandescence is always going to affect all of these other attributes. So let's go back and get our gray material back and look at this object. Let's add some ambience. Ambient color, and let's go now to our incandescence. If I increase this, look what happens.